let's get started. Let's have you guys introduce yourselves. Just give us a little background and tell us what you do, who you work for, and what's going on. Anyway, let's start with you, Justin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Miller. I'm the owner and CEO of High Life Solar. We are a renewable energy company that specifically caters to cannabis cultivators. A big part of what we do outside of offsetting people's electric usage is actually getting them tax credit eligible for those renewable energy tax credits. So I'm excited to discuss further with you guys.
Great. Well, thanks for being here. How about you, Betsy?
Yeah, hi, I am Betsy Morum with Morum and Waller CPAs. I'm a co-founder and managing partner, and we are a full-service CPA firm that specializes in the cannabis space. So we provide clients with services from bookkeeping to controller to fractional CFO to tax planning and preparation.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Mark?
Hi, everybody. Mark Waller, Morum and Waller CPAs. I'm the other half of the partnership of Morum and Waller alongside Betsy. And like she said, we work virtual CFO and specifically in the cannabis industry, and have a wonderful tax partner, Paula Collins, who is really our resident tax expert. And I'll let her talk about herself, but nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
Okay, Paula.
Hi, I'm Paula Collins, and I am a tax attorney specializing in the cannabis industry, and very proud to say that I am the exclusive tax partner of Morum and Waller. Super jazzed for what's going on in Minnesota. Currently, I'm based in New York, and I work in New York, New Jersey, and soon in Minnesota, but tax is all over the country, so I literally have tax clients all over the country.
Okay, well, thanks for being aboard. How about you, Sam? Thanks for being on again.
No worries. Pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So my name is Sam Milton. I own and operate Climate Resources Group, and we are a consultancy that works with growers and other businesses to help them be smarter energy users and consumers, and for the purpose of increasing their profits and reducing their overall environmental footprint. So for us, it's a real win-win-win when folks use energy efficient technology, and especially when they get incentives from utilities and the state and feds to be adopting more clean tech energy. So for their facilities. So yeah, so I'm here, and love getting my clients free money to do good stuff.
Okay, you're breaking up a little there. Let's get on to the first question. This one's directed to Justin, but anybody else can pipe in after him. One of the things that you specialize in are PPAs and solar. Can you explain what a PPA is and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of cultivators don't necessarily have the capital to purchase a solar system outright. And so for cultivators that have any sort of land accessible or that they own, what we'll do is we'll lease the land that's next to the cultivation. We'll find an investor to purchase the solar array, and they'll own the solar array, and then we'll sell the energy that solar array produces to the cultivator. Really, our goal with the PPA is for that cultivation to spend very little out of pocket to significantly lower their overhead cost and utilities. So we've had a lot of success with this. Again, it's great for cultivators who don't have the capital or necessarily the tax appetite to want to purchase a solar system.
Okay, so who would be a good fit for a PPA?
Cultivators with land. Any cultivator that has, if their electric bill is a major pain point and they've got some space next to their cultivation, a PPA is a great fit for them.
Okay. On average, how much could a cultivation save? Or in other terms, how long until a cultivation sees a return on investment on PPA?
As far as return on investment, a cultivation will see savings month one that it's turned on. Really for them, it's if you look at it from an ROI standpoint, if they're purchasing the system, depending on where they're located, the cost of utilities in the state that they're in, we see anywhere from 5 to 7 years for an ROI if someone's purchasing the solar system. But for a PPA, the beautiful thing is once that system's turned on, they're just making payments for the energy they're getting from the solar array rather than to their utility company. So they'll see savings month one with a PPA.
Mm-hmm. Sam, you specialize in energy efficiency. What sort of capital asset offsets are available to cannabis businesses that want to upgrade to more of energy efficient equipment?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. It's a great question. So utilities across the country generally like to see any technology that can reduce energy consumption for that customer. So for the cannabis space, the big things are LEDs, the lights, of course, and HVAC and humidifying systems. So the typical lighting system that folks use are 1,000-watt high pressure sodium fixtures, super energy intensive and put out a lot of heat. And utilities know that if a customer upgrades to a much lower light intensity fixture, it's like 600 watts or so, that's driven by LED drivers, that fixture can actually put out as much light as a 1,000-watt fixture, but for a fraction of the energy consumption. And for that, they can often give 50% off the value of that fixture to the consumer. So you can see a customer can buy $1 million worth of equipment and get a $500,000 check in the mail just for doing that. And that's an average too. Some utilities will pay up to 75% of the cost, sometimes even 100%, which is pretty crazy. Think about it. But yeah, these programs exist for the purpose of getting the customers to reduce energy consumption, which is it's funny if you think about it, right? Because the utility is a business of selling energy. But these programs are really set up, by the state agencies, and even the utilities are incentivized themselves to actually reduce the amount of power that they need to generate. That costs money too. So it's these great programs, and anybody can take advantage of them really if they have a utility. If their utility, has a program, and most in the country do. So it's always worth to ask and see if these are available for them.
Okay. Does anybody want to expand on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I wear two hats. That is that of a tax professional and that of an attorney. And an attorney will always say, well, it depends. And a tax professional will say the devil is in the details. And so what I want to caution people about, and any listener, whether it's for cultivation or whether it's just for regular consumer use, the renewable credits for energy are not refundable credits. And I say that because I will often have a taxpayer approach me and say, oh, well, I made X amount of dollars, but I put these fantastic solar units in place, and so I'm waiting for my big check. And the credit is only up to certain levels of income, and so it's not as if if you were operating very close to your bottom line, if you didn't generate enough income, then you will not be getting that check. Now, you can have that check or that credit extend into the future, but if you're really, really close to your bottom line, you're not going to make money off of this. In other words, it will cut your tax bill, but it is not something to look for. It's not like an ATM.
Yeah, I think an important distinction. I'm curious, it'd be interesting to have this conversation. But there's the federal and state tax apparatus, which a lot of the clean energy investments can get credit on. There's also the utility programs, which literally just going to write a check for a customer that makes an investment in a technology that's eligible for their program. So lots of different ways that folks can get money. And I primarily for my work deal with the utilities and interface with them and the customers, my grower clients, to help them kind of navigate that process, which I think exists independent from the tax structure. But you guys are the tax experts, so you would know that better than I would. But yeah, a lot of these folks just they get a check from utility for purchasing lights and HVAC. And it's pretty well established program. It's very exciting.
The other thing I'd like to throw in is, we're taxed at so many different levels. And so we want to look at what are the tax credits that are available to you at the federal level, but also at the state level, and in many cases at the county, and in the case of New York City, at the city level. So don't just stop at the federal level. Really explore how can you maximize your credits once you make this investment.
Okay, this question's for Betsy. As our tax expert, how do the possibilities that Justin and Sam outlined affect a business's tax liabilities?
So I'll actually defer to Paula for that. Mark and I really specialize more in the day-to-day accounting, and Paula helps us with the tax details. So I think she touched on that a little bit, how credit can be applied to your tax liability to reduce it. But Paula, would you want to add anything more to that comment?
Well, just to zero in that it affects the tax liability. But again, it's not something to tap into. It's not like a rebate. It is not a refundable credit. So I just want to emphasize that. And I'm emphasizing it actually. I have a really good friend who put solar panels on her home. She's not a very high income producer, but she literally thought she was going to get a check back for $30,000. No, it doesn't work that way. It's not a refundable credit. So I just really want to emphasize that, especially for, a startup business that has tremendous expenses in that first year. This is a great program to get into. It's good for the earth. It's good for the longevity of the company, and you're finding a way to eventually make it so that your costs for your electricity are really being paid to you in a way. Am I correct? So what a beautiful thing. What I want to make sure of is that you're not jumping into this thinking, well, I'll sign on the dotted line and I'll get a big check at the end of the year, even if I'm in my first year and I've had all of these expenses and therefore my profit is at a very low level.
Can I
Oh, no, go
sorry.
ahead. No, I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, you're good. I would just add to that, thinking from kind of that controller CFO level, where I think this can be advantageous is kind of on a holistic view of a business's monthly expenses. And so that's where, if you can get solar into your company and it saves you some money with the utilities, those are things that I don't see cannabis businesses doing at all, really, is thinking about those things and thinking about the kind of the fixed costs that a business has that are just as valid and maybe a quicker way to save some money than anything else, really, is just to be looking at, really be mindful of what are my fixed costs, what am I paying for energy, is there something with this program that I can use that can reduce my long-term energy expenses by X%. Like, those are the kinds of things that I think are going to be really valuable, and maybe, like Paula said, not going to be a magic bullet, not going to be like a check that comes back to you with 50K, which I would also caution businesses who are hoping for credits to come back to say, well, you kind of have to look at your whole tax liability as a whole, and that might, even if you get a check, it might just be reducing your total taxable liability. So I wouldn't think of it as a magic bullet, so to speak, but it is an important piece of kind of managing the day-to-day business.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing to that, just to add one more thing to that. From Mark and I's perspective, we're always trying to find ways to help our clients be more sustainable, not just strictly from like an environmental standpoint, but as a business, how can you be sustainable as a business? This is a type of industry where a lot of businesses come and go. So if you can present them with ways to conserve money over time, that helps them, drop that to their bottom line, stay around longer. That's a huge value add that we can bring to our clients.
And just to add on to that, it's a huge value to add on. And it's also, I could see it as part of the company's branding, the company presenting itself as a sustainable, engaging in sustainable practices. And, for those who are in startup mode, who might be looking at, I always encourage people to look at exit strategies, even from day one, even if you are in love with your business and think this is my baby. By having this equipment in place and these solar systems in place, you certainly are positioning yourself for an exit strategy that's very favorable to a future buyer. Now, those tax credits would arguably not be there for the buyer, but Definitely the sustainable energy practices, the savings on costs for utilities, as well as just, again, that branding and that, you know, the earth is, this is all we've got. We've got to take care of it.
I couldn't agree more with everything you guys have said. And something that often comes up with clients who are in year 2 or 3 is talking about future proofing their businesses. And so whether they're looking at a PPA or purchasing the system, and honestly, Paul, like, you nailed it. If people don't have the tax liability, pretty rarely will I ever recommend someone purchase it. There's really no point for them to do that. But the kind of crazy thing is that bottom line that we're talking about from their energy costs, just this past year in Colorado, utility bills went up 9%. And so for a lot of cultivators, I mean, besides labor, and sometimes it's even more, their utility bill is their largest overhead expense. And so regardless of what industry you're in, if your biggest expense goes up 9% year over year, it's really hard to do anything sustainable. Mm-hmm. And so really the conversation we have is, yes, it's about the environment, the planet, but it's future-proofing your bottom line by now you have something that's consistent that you can depend on, and you're not at the mercy essentially of rate increases from the utility company.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what's the difference between a tax credit and a tax exemption?
Being a smart energy consumer makes so much sense for a cultivation operation, because not only does it reduce the operating costs, as Justin mentioned, is really important, and as you all mentioned, just because energy rates are generally going up. I'm actually in the Northeast, where a 9% increase in power would be welcome for a lot of operators. So there's definitely that piece, and you are reducing your environmental footprint too. Generally, when you reduce your energy consumption. And given the focus that a lot of growers are having these days on being more sustainable, maybe kind of having a lower overall kind of carbon footprint, which a lot of cities and states are requiring folks now to think about, that is doubly important. And not to mention also, insurance costs can also go down if an operator is choosing to use energy efficient equipment like that's LEDs. I know insurance premiums can actually be higher for those operators who use the 1,000-watt HPS fixtures because they are a fire hazard. So there's multiple reasons to certainly to think about your energy consumption. And it's not always a function of widgets too. Folks can do energy audits, a lot of times paid for by utilities themselves, or they'll do a cost share. And those will come up with some really interesting operational adjustments folks can make. That can also reduce their energy consumption. And so it's not just the bells and whistles that folks can purchase, but also how you operate the technology that you have.
That's really interesting about perspective on the insurance costs as well, how that ties into it.
Yeah. That to me, that's gets back to just kind of thinking about your business holistically, is that all the pieces connect to each other in some way. So I think a mistake businesses make sometimes is thinking about their different functions in silos, when in reality they need to be thinking about their business holistically. So if there is a program like this that other areas of your business can take advantage of, it's definitely something you want to be proactive in pursuing.
Okay, well, thank you. So what's the difference between a tax credit and a tax exemption?
So should I jump in?
Anybody?
Well, basically a tax credit is going to come after we figured out your entire tax bill. But whereas a tax exemption is going to say that certain amounts of your income are not going to be computed for tax purposes. So if your company made $1 million, but somehow you had an exemption on $30,000 of that income, then your income would be, or your tax bill would be computed on that 1 million minus 30,000. Whereas the tax credit would come after we had already computed the $1 million, figured out what that tax bill is, and then offered a credit afterwards.
Okay. Where should people get started in learning more about this, and how do they go about getting the most benefits they can from these tax credits and exemptions?
Well, I like Mark's word, and Mark and Betsy take the idea of looking holistically at the enterprise and determining what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what's an opportunity, and what is a threat. And as I say, the threat as a tax person, we're very negative people, really. So I'm going to say, oh, well, do you really need to spend that money, or do you really think you're going to get that money back? But here's this wonderful opportunity to do a lot of good and to make your business really so much more sound and on so many different levels. And so I really want to encourage people to look holistically, talk to the energy people, but then also talk to your accountant, talk to your attorney, talk to your operations people and see, well, what are we cutting corners on our energy usage because we're worried about cost? And is this a way that we could really kind of, take a deep breath and think, okay, we can use our energy that we really, really need for this cultivation venture.
Okay. Well, I'm just about out of questions. So does anybody have anything they want to add or plug or talk about?
I'll just add that it's a really good time to be thinking about taxes. If you haven't already, which I know pretty much everybody is thinking about taxes in March and April, but it's never too late to get things right if things are off track. So certainly feel free to reach out to Betsy or Paula or I to talk more about that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast today. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks for asking us.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
us.
very much.
And it was great to meet the rest of you guys. Sincerely.
Yeah, you
Yeah, you
too.
as well.
You too.